Hey there, beautiful teachers, and welcome to another Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. This is your weekly show here on YouTube where we talk about the latest goings on in the music teaching industry. We talk about a special topic each week, and we have some fun and some general chatter as well. We always start with a warm-up here on the show, starting with our solfa singing. So that's what we'll do right now. So this is a solfa singing exercise. We're up to number 5 in the Serenaders set. Serenaders is the second set of Solfa Railroad. It uses the pentatonic scale, so do, re, mi, so, la. If you don't sing in solfa, don't worry about it. You can sing do, 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 do. You can just hum it, or you can use it to learn a new skill. Like you might be familiar with the solfa names, but not super comfortable singing with them yet. Well, this is your chance to give it a go. I'm pretty comfortable singing in solfa, but not as good with the hand signs. Although I'm okay sometimes, and then sometimes here on the show I mess them up. So I use this segment to practice my hand signs. This one is in 6/8, so what you're going to hear is a tonic chord, the starting note, and then one bar of count in, and then it'll start. So sing along. Let's give it a go at the slower speed first. Alright, and let's try the faster version. Give it a go if you didn't try it that time. Try it the next time. You've heard it already now. Well done. I hope your voices are getting warm. We'll get going with our rhythmic warm-up now. So we'll just run through the symbols first. The dark blue, when you see that, you're going to tap with both hands on your legs, on the table, on the piano, whatever you like. Then the yellow, that's touch your head. The light blue is clap. And what else do we have? We have the pink, which is a wave. Often I tell my students this is like a chop more than a wave, because if it's short, you're going to need to just do a chop in the air rather than like waving back and forth. You don't have time for that. Although when it is on a long note, it's not in this one. When it is on a longer note, I like to do jazz hands. Okay, let's give it a go. We'll try the slower track. Okay, awesome stuff. Let's try the faster version. If you haven't done any of the warm-ups before this in this show, this is your chance. Give it a go. Oh my gosh, we've lost it. Here we go. Oh my gosh, I'm going all over the place. I think there's a touch thing. 3. Alright, beautiful stuff. You're all warmed up. Let's get into our main topic. So our main topic of today is about how to fit more into your lesson time, or how to save lesson time that you might be wasting. Now, I have a few tips here. We have a full course now on this inside Vibrant Music Teaching with loads more tips. So if you're not a member, you can go to vibrantmusicteaching.com. Oops, sorry. click on the wrong one, vibrantmusicteaching.com. That's where you can find the course. If you are a member, of course, you can just log in and you'll get instant access to that new course. It's called Lesson Time Liberators. But in this show, what I want to do is go through 4 of the main culprits, or 4 of the main ways that I think you can fit more into your lessons. And honestly, if you do just these 4 things, you will get really far as well. If you want to take it further, then there is the Lesson Time Liberators course. So let's start out with one of the biggest things that I try to improve in my own teaching and also drill into the teachers that work here, that work at Colourful Keys Piano Studio. And that is to try and remove filler words. So if you already know what your filler words are, I would love to hear them. There are all sorts of filler that people put into their sentences that honestly, it can waste so much time. And I know this from my own teaching. I know it because we actually do video recordings every so often of the lessons here of the other teachers. So I watch them back and I can kind of see how much of the lesson time is getting eaten by those filler words. And they wouldn't mind me saying this. They know, like, this is one of the things we work on again and again. And they don't seem anyway to think I'm just being pedantic, because it really does make an enormous difference and it wastes so much time. So there are the obvious ones. There's like the ums and the ahs and those kind of fillers. But then there are the ones that actually take up more time that are worse culprits. My short one that I do instead of and ah most often, sometimes I say of course you will have heard me, but more often that I say so. So I put in so where it's not needed all the time, and you're going to start to notice it, and maybe it'll make you enjoy the show less, so I'm sorry about that. I do try and cut it out as much as possible, but at the same time, we all need some level of filler in our sentences. That's just thinking time, right? And in some cases, we can't just leave a silence, although often that is better. However, the filler for teachers that I'm really talking about, and maybe some of you will be able to pick out things like this that you do, are things like, okay, now next we're going to, if you wouldn't mind, please. Stuff like that. Do any of you say things like that? Do you think it's just not a problem? Perhaps, like, you can argue with me. But things like that, sentences like that, which are really just things that go before the first comma in the sentence in a lot of cases. So they're just like introductory words that then there would, if it was written down, there'd be a comma and then the real sentence. And they waste so much time. They honestly do. And not just that, but they're confusing. They end up diluting our message. And we do it usually because it feels more polite. Does anyone have one of these they can identify in their own teaching? I know we all have them, but it often sounds more polite, like the obvious one I said there, if you wouldn't mind, could you please, that kind of thing. It's obviously trying to be polite, but it's unnecessary. I mean, we're not barking orders, but at the same time, we don't need to add all this fluff before we get to the real thing that we want to say. Which is what we're often doing. So I think, there's my so again. I think a lot of us have those, and it can be hard to identify them in your own speech, but when you do, try and cut them. Yeah? If you wouldn't mind, or the big one I've noticed recently with the teachers here, honestly, is saying what you're going to say. For example, that the next thing that we're going to do is, what we're going to do now is that we're going to. I know that sounds odd, but like people do speak like that. And when it's not me pointing it out like that, you wouldn't really notice they're saying it, but it eats up second after second after second of lesson time. And in the end, they're left asking me, how do you fit so much more than me into your lessons? And it's stuff like that a lot of the time. Yeah, we add more fluff so we don't sound harsh. But we can not sound harsh by just not sounding harsh. I mean, we can just smile. We can say things in a friendly tone. We don't have to add a whole lot of nothing, before we say the real thing. And as I said, for many students, that ends up just being confusing. They're just trying to filter it through, especially for our students with additional needs, but even for neurotypical students, they just have to filter through all of that and say, okay, what did they actually want? Right? Because they've got all this stuff going on. Like, they're learning all this music stuff at the same time, and all of life is new for them if they're young. And so we're just adding clutter into our sentences that is just getting in the way. Janelle, yes, would you like to? That's a terrible one because we never mean it, do we? We never would accept, no, I wouldn't like to. We usually say it when we mean, do this now. Not would you like to. And it's one of those things that if we do it with another adult, they'll get that we don't mean would you like to. And some kids will also get it, but really it's just getting in the way. It's not doing anything. Yeah, it makes it confusing for sure. It's unnecessary. Okay, the second thing is related, and it's related to what Piano Princess said before. I spend too much time explaining things a bunch of different ways rather than just saying it shortly and simply and going on. And I'll take that further. I think most teachers, especially newer teachers, explain when they should be providing an experience. And it's because explaining is the more obvious, the easier option in most cases. It's the default. We want to explain it. So there are several reasons why we fall into this trap, but that's one of them, is because it's kind of easier, more immediately obvious, definitely. So what I mean by this is, let's say you introduce Alberti bass to a student, right? And it's going to be in a rote piece. Let's just say that's the situation. Well, you could start by explaining about chords and how you're going to play the root and the 5 and then the 3 and the 5 and where Alberti bass comes from and why it's called Alberti bass and what type of music it's typical in. Or you could say, hey, put your hand here. Play this. Now play this. Now play this. Now play this. 4 notes. Okay, can you play that full pattern again? What's the pattern that's happening there? What are you doing with your hand? Okay, we call that Alberti bass, and we're going to learn a piece that uses it. That's just one simple example, but it could have turned into, particularly with a newer teacher, it could have turned into like a 2-minute explanation. I would say 2 to 3 minutes. Some teachers would end up talking about Alberti bass. Even if it was going to be 20 seconds, it was 20 seconds too long. It should be step 1, do this. It's our job as a teacher to map out the steps that are going to lead to the student discovering the information themselves and do as little explaining of the thing as humanly possible. And this is not just for our children either. It's for adult students as well. And I think sometimes we mistakenly think that because an adult kind of could get what we were saying, we can just give them the big explanation because we want to do that. Yes, sometimes because it's easier, it seems more obvious. Sometimes just because we are so interested in it. Does anyone fall prey to this? We're so interested in the theory behind it or the history of it or whatever that we just want to chat about it. And that's the real reason we're giving a big explanation. And the adult might seem interested, but ultimately they end up feeling overwhelmed because they don't have all the other bits of the jigsaw. And so when we throw this layer on top of the jigsaw, they can't process it. And it ends up feeling to them like, oh my gosh, music is so complicated. So I think it's almost more important to be aware of this with adults because we have an even higher tendency, an even greater tendency towards explaining stuff when we should be doing. The student should be doing it. It's a huge waste of lesson time. It takes more lesson time to explain it rather than do the steps. And then after you explain it, they still have to do the steps because they have to have the practical knowledge as well. So I would say that is actually the number one way that teachers are eating up their lessons, is explaining when they should be letting students have an experience of the thing. The second way is not easy, but it can be done if you map out the steps in your head and are properly prepared for your lessons. Okay, number 3, and I can loop back to any of these if you want to follow up with them. But number 3, in this shorter list of the lesson time liberators, is to interleave. Now, we did a whole show about interleaved teaching here on the YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch the full thing. I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version, okay? So, interleaved practice, we'll start there. That's a general term that lots of people use. What it means is, instead of practicing the sonatina for 10 minutes and then the jazz rag for 10 minutes and then the Bluesy Tuesday for 10 minutes. If I've said any real piece titles, just ignore me. I'm trying to give random examples. Instead of doing each for 10 minutes, we do piece A, just a little bit, and then piece B, and then piece C, and then back to piece B, and then back to piece A, back to piece C, and we just are shuffling through them for the 30 minutes. That feels harder because it is more work for our brains to keep switching back and forth, and it feels like we're not getting as far, but the studies have shown that we're getting further. We have better long-term retention. We actually make more progress. Now, that type of practice is not always suitable for beginners, but interleaved teaching is suitable for everyone, and that's kind of a term I made up, although its origins are obvious, right? So when I talk about interleaved teaching, I'm basically talking about doing that form of structure, doing that kind of structure in your lesson. So you don't do all their practice pieces one by one, and then all their new pieces one by one, and then all their scales, and then they go home. You make a conscious effort to mix things up and to loop back to things again and again. If you do this, your students will get further in that lesson time, but you need to be prepared to move quickly from one thing to the next. So this is where we come back to our filler words. Don't employ this strategy and then spend several seconds between each thing saying, okay, that was great, well done with that thing, now we're going to do this other thing. So let's take out your book again. Does this sound familiar? You have to just jump to it. You just have to say, okay, great, play the sonatina for me again. Or play this bar. It has to be simple and succinct. And trust me, it doesn't have to come across as demanding or jumpy to the student or kind of strict and unfriendly. It can be quite fun, actually. And students love it because they keep moving in different directions. They don't know where we're going to go next. Yeah, spaced repetition is slightly different usually if we are really strict about the terms. Spaces could be spaced by a break, whereas interleaving is actually, you could think of it as interweaving. It's literally taking several things and looping them around each other and repeating them in different orders. So you're jumping between several tasks rather than just spacing out the one task. Hope that makes sense. But again, that's a fiddly detail, so call it whatever you like. So what is the key to student-driven or student-led lessons being more successful? I want my kids to have an opinion and make some choices during the lesson. Okay, let's think about this, because maybe we want them to make choices, but we want them to make choices that matter to them. So I don't think we need to provide a whole bunch of choices for our students to feel like we are listening to them, like they're involved, like they get ownership over the process. I think they need to make some important choices and maybe one smaller choice. A very simple example of a smaller choice is just when the student first comes in and maybe after they've done their warm-up, just asking them, okay, what was your favorite piece to practice this week? Let's do that first. That's them making a choice, okay? But the more important thing to me is that they get some choice over their repertoire. So I provide choices to my students about what supplemental book we're going to add, what piece they might be playing for a concert, what pieces they're playing for exams differently, any other additional pieces. If they get a little bit older, I'll ask them periodically if there's anything special they would like to learn, normally like a pop song or something that they would like. So giving students important choices, yes, but without a full understanding of what some teachers may mean by student-led lessons, I'm not sure that would be my goal. Student-led or student-driven. Because sometimes, I'm not accusing you of this, Janelle, by any means whatsoever. You're a wonderful teacher, I can tell. But sometimes I think it could be used as an excuse for not planning as a teacher. Like, oh, my lessons are student-led, meaning I leave everything up to the student. And I know that's not what a lot of people mean, but I do think it's what teachers could construe it to mean. So that's maybe a tangent, but just wanted to note that. Okay, my fourth tip, and this one is the best thing you could do. It's a bigger ask, but it's the best thing you could do, so I want you to listen carefully. The best thing you could do to improve your teaching pacing and fit more into your lessons is to record your teaching. If you video record your lessons for a week and watch them back, as painful as that might be, you will learn so much about your teaching. And yes, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Yes, to everyone. Absolutely everyone on the planet, I would say, bar possibly a sociopath. It will be initially a little bit excruciating because you're not used to listening to yourself speak. You're not used to looking at yourself from the outside. And sometimes it can be cringy watching your own teaching, especially. But if you can get over yourself a little bit and just get used to it, and I promise it gets easier after at least, a couple dozen hours, it will get easier to watch yourself and you will learn so much. Take notes about those phrases that you say again and again. What are your filler words? What are you wasting time explaining when you should be getting students to experience it? If you truly want to improve your teaching in a way that is far accelerated beyond any training program I've ever seen, including my own, record yourself. Just set up your phone or a little video camera, whatever you have. It doesn't have to be good quality. It's just for you to watch it. If you cannot bear to video record it, then at least audio record it. Just use like the voice memos app on your phone. Just leave that running. And you're not going to put this anywhere. This is not going to go online. So it's not about getting parent permission and posting those videos and stuff like that. It's just for you. It's for you to watch it and take notes the whole time. Treat it like a learning experience. Treat it like it's a class. And you will learn so much more than I could teach you by talking at you, honestly. What do you think about student taking notes rather than me writing down all their assignments? They might take more ownership, but it would take longer. Yeah, look, a lot of teachers really like this. And a lot of others say, I just can't bear it. It takes too long. So I'm maybe somewhere in the middle camp. I take notes for my students. I set up all the assignments. I'm typing them. It takes me, a microsecond to type a sentence versus them taking like 5 minutes, especially since my students skew a little bit younger. So I will continue to do that. I don't want to have my students take all their notes. But again, I'm doing it on a computer. If it was a notebook, I would feel a little bit differently about it. However, if we're going to write a reminder, so we'll often write just like a couple of words or a practice strategy that's like step 1, do this, step 2, do this, on a post-it and put that on the page. And if my student is, say, over 8 and I know they can write okay, then I will get them to write that themselves. So that's kind of my middle ground answer to that. Okay, awesome. If you have any other questions, do add them in now. So just to recap, my 4 little tips are, first of all, find your filler words and remove them, especially those filler half sentences like, okay, and now we're going to do this thing, rather than just do this. Number 2, experience, don't explain. Have your student do each step, and through that they will learn anything that you could have explained to them rather than sitting there listening to you. Number 3, interleave your teaching. Go from one thing to another and back to the first thing. Loop things around. Cycle through them so that your students learn more efficiently. They don't end up slowing down and becoming mindless with a task that they're doing for too long. And number 4, if you're brave, record your teaching for a whole week and watch it back and take notes about where you're wasting time or just what you could be doing better in general. Alright, I saved the most ridiculous snap camera for just before Halloween. If you have a question, please do type it into the chat. Just start with the word question or type it in, and I'll be happy to stay on for a few minutes to answer any of those. This is just amazing, isn't it? I mean, look at this. What genius came up with this? Oh, amazing. Christy said, all my practice strategies are pre-printed on post-it pads. That is an amazing amount of peas. It's like a tongue twister. The student and I discussed which strategy we should use in the and the post-it goes on the music. Nice. Yeah, I know you don't non-plan, Janelle. I was just making that note because I have heard some teachers being like, no, I can't plan because my lessons are student-led. And that's not, not something I agree with. Let's leave it at that. How do you get such a clear screen for recording? Right now, not included, right? Because I've got a candy bowl on my face. Tracy, so my camera is like a proper camera. That's the real answer, okay? So if you want the full details, it is a Sony ZV-E10. Or if you're American, a Sony ZV-E10, which is obviously easier to say, but not how I say Z. Yeah. So it's that, and then the lens is kind of a fancier lens. It's a Sigma 16mm. Those are the details. Probably overkill for teaching or something like that, but I do this YouTube show every week and record a lot of videos and stuff, so that's why I have that set up. And then the other big part of it is the lighting. I did a video, by the way, on this. I'm just trying to remember the title of it. I think it's something like how to improve your online tech setup. If you look back through all the live ones, Tracy, you should be able to find it, but it was like 10 or some number of tech upgrades for teachers, and I did put my camera details in there in case anyone was interested. I also have a big box light, so it's like that kind that's like a tent, sort of square tent shape, and then it has a white fabric over the top, so that's pointed at me. One little tip that I picked up from a photography lighting guy is that basically where the light should go is like you're high-fiving it, so it's almost within my reach. With my setup, I can't put it quite at a high-five length, but that's where it should be. And it's a 3-point lighting system, so there's one here, one there, oh, I'm getting away with my candy bowl, and one over there pointing kind of behind me. That's a basic 3-point lighting technique. Hope that helps. But yeah, it's overkill for teaching and stuff like that, I think. Wonderful. Tanya asked Christy about the post-its that are printed. Christy designed them herself, which is awesome, and used some ideas from VMT and then had them printed at Vistaprint. Yeah, you can get post-its printed, which is super cool. No, that's what I meant, Janelle. Sorry if I was unclear. I know you overplan. I totally get it. Okay, wonderful. I can't see any other fresh questions. So, okay. Awesome stuff. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful Halloween, if that's a thing where you are, and that you don't get a real candy ball stuck all over your face. Not necessary at all. And yeah, if you have a break next week like me, I hope you enjoy it. I will see you back here again in 2 weeks. Can't wait to be back with you already. I'll see you then.